fly across the heavens to the forest moon of Endor. To a world of wonder and magic, the ultimate in adventure. A new dimension in excitement. Lucasfilm's The Ewok Adventure at 8, 7 Central.
Sunday.
So we're very pleased to welcome today Eric Walker to the Vintage Rebellion. Now, Eric, as you'll all know, is best known for his role as Mace Tawani in the Ewok movies. But Eric is also an accomplished author, musician, and broadcaster. We're going to get into all of that later. Eric, thank you so much for joining us all on the Vintage Rebellion today. And also joining me as co-host is Chris Porteous. Hello, Chris.
Happy to be here. I've been helping out behind the scenes for a long time at this point, but I couldn't resist the opportunity to sit in on this interview on the eve of the Ewok movies being released on Disney+.
Eric, welcome to the Vintage Rebellion, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having me. It's my pleasure.
It's a real pleasure for us, sir. And I suppose the best place to start is at the start, isn't it? So how did you first get into acting? What made you decide that was where you wanted to go?
We live in Los Angeles, and so we grew up in the Hollywood area, the LA area in California. And my mother's dream was to always see her kids in commercials or on movies or that sort of thing. And so, unfortunately, my mother passed away at a very young age. And knowing that was her dream, I just happened to have a strike. I got lucky in a sense. I was 6 years old. I was playing on a football league, and there was a fast food chain out here called Jack in a Box. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jack in a Box, but it's a fast food chain like McDonald's. And except for the food is a lot better than McDonald's. So they came out and they saw that the whole commercial was to have our football team stop at a Jack in a Box after we played a game. So they picked all of us on the team to do a Jack in a Box commercial. So we did 2 commercials, and I was 7 years old at the time. This is about 1977-ish. And I thought, wow, this is great. I get to eat the food that I love, fast food, Jack in a Box, and I'm getting paid. I think I got at that time about $350 for the day. And back in 1977, $350 is a lot of money even today to be paid per day. So I thought that was great. Oh, this is great. So I kept trying to get in, beg my father, please let me get into show business. I really like doing this. And he was saying, are you sure it wasn't just that you wanted to eat fast food or something? No, Dad, I really want to be an actor. So I pestered him for a number of years. And then when he finally saw I was serious, he said, okay, yeah. And I always use that excuse, this is mom's dream. This is mom's dream. So, tug at his heartstrings as well. So he finally said, okay. And my sister happened to go to school with a girl who was an actress. She was one of the Pippi Longstockings back in the day. And she knew some agents. And so she got a couple phone numbers for different agents. And my sister, Teresa, called them and set up an interview with them. And the first agent that I interviewed with signed me. And that was Beverly Hecht. She had an agency out here called the Beverly Hecht Agency. That's how it all started. This is around, now we're going from 77 to about 1980-ish. And that's when I really started to pursue acting, was around 1980. So that's how it all got started.
And were you a Star Wars fan before getting involved in the movie, or did you have any of the toys or merchandise?
I didn't have any of the toys or any of the merchandise, but I was a big Return of the Jedi fan. I had seen Return of the Jedi probably 8 or 12 times the summer before I even auditioned for it. So I knew what Ewoks were. So I was very well aware of what at first I didn't know that I was auditioning for George Lucas. That was kind of hush hush. And when I first went in to meet I met with John Cordy and the producer, Tom Smith. They just said that they needed to get me on tape to show the executive producer what I looked like, because they thought I looked right for the part. But they didn't say it was George Lucas, of course. But yes, I would say I was a pretty big fan of Star Wars, because I said I saw it like 8 or 12 times the summer before.
So I just got to ask, so if you saw it that many times, I do anecdotally hear that some kids weren't super crazy about the Ewoks at the time. Did you remember having a reaction to them from Return of the Jedi? Or I guess if you saw it 15 times, you must have been fully on board.
I was fully on board with what they were about. And I had not seen Empire Strikes Back, and I had not seen the original Star Wars, A New Hope, because I was just young enough that I wasn't into going to movies at that time. So I knew what Star Wars was, and it was this big phenomenon, but I didn't, like I said, my first taste of Star Wars was Return of the Jedi. And of course, Ewoks, I just thought they were cute. You know, I didn't have these other two movies in this whole trilogy to look back on like other people did. So looking back, I could see why people had issues with them, but I didn't at the time. I still don't. I think the Ewoks are great. I was, of course, who wouldn't want to be Luke Skywalker, right? You know, I wanted to become a Jedi Knight like Luke Skywalker, and you know, of course, we played games with friends, and like I'm Luke Skywalker, and someone else will play Obi-Wan Kenobi. So we were all into all that stuff at the time.
And do you have any memories of when you finally did get around to seeing Star Wars and Empire?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the first time I saw them, I was invited to, on the 10th anniversary, I was invited to a trilogy screening with a bunch of fans, and it was over in the Cinerama Dome, which is this big, huge theater here in Hollywood. So I actually saw the trilogy, and that was the first time I saw, it just blew my mind. Of course, the first time I saw even Return of the Jedi, it blew my mind because here I was in a theater, and when the credits rolled, people were clapping and cheering. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. Maybe I need to see these other movies. So yeah, no, it's and of course my favorite Star Wars movie is Empire Strikes Back by far. It's my favorite one.
Yeah, I've got to say, I was a Star Wars fan from the start. I saw the first movie in the cinema, and I loved Jedi. I thought it was fantastic. I totally got the idea of the Ewoks, the primitive little natives rising up against the technical oppressors. And yeah, I don't see what problem people have got with the Ewoks. I thought it was fantastic. So you were obviously a fan then. It must have been really exciting when you heard that you were in line for. I guess did you think it was the next Star Wars movie, or but you said when you first heard about the audition, the opportunity, it wasn't Star Wars mentioned at all. How did all that come about?
What happened was I got a call, and it was the same day audition. My agent I called my dad and said, "Eric, I have a general interview for Eric. It's just a general interview. You don't have to go by and pick up sides. Sides are the script, is what we call them. So you don't have to go by and pick up the script. He doesn't have to learn any lines. They just want to meet with Eric to see if he looks right for the part. But in what they were calling it at the time was, they said it was for an after school TV special that's going to be an hour long, and Eric is going to play this kind of a tough kid. So have him dressed like a tough kid, like he's a bully or something like that. And of course, that wasn't at all what it was. And when I got there, the audition was at the Egg Factory, which was Lucasfilm's headquarters down here in Hollywood, which is on Lancashire Boulevard. It was just right across the street from Universal Studios. It's not there any longer. Now it's a subway station. So I went there. I met with John Cordy and Thomas Smith, and they seemed to like me. And they said, "You know what, Eric, we really like your look. I know we didn't say this, but would you mind taking the sides of the script and going and working on it? We'll give you 15, 20 minutes so you could go work on it with your dad outside, so that we could get you on videotape so we could show this executive producer," which I mentioned earlier. And I said, in one condition, I'll go ahead and do it, but you have to let me do my monologue, because at that time I was really this serious actor. I was studying in acting workshops and stuff like that. And as an actor, you always had to be prepared for any audition. So in my repertoire, I had this very serious monologue piece, and I said, "Let me do that monologue piece, and then that's okay. I'll be okay with it, just barely studying the lines." So I went outside, worked on it, came back in, delivered the lines, did my monologue. And the interview was over, and they seemed a little happy, but they weren't showing it that much. They said, "You did a great job. We're going to show this to the executive producer, and we'll be in touch." About a week later is when I did the screen test with Aubrey Miller. That's another whole story. They flew us up to Northern California, in Marin County, and we did the screen test at Cordy Films, which was in Mill Valley, which is pretty close. It's a little bit closer to San Francisco than San Rafael. And we did the screen test all day long. We were filming, Aubrey Miller and myself, and somewhere about near the end of the day, they brought out, they said, we want to bring out one of the main characters. It's an Ewok. We want to make sure that Aubrey Miller is not, because at the time she was only 4 years old. So we want to make sure she's not scared of an Ewok. So they brought out this Ewok on a stick, and she ran right up to it and started hugging it right away. And she had no fear of it and thought it was cute and looks like a little teddy bear. And so that quelled their fears. And then they said, can you give us a few minutes? And we said, okay. And about 10 minutes later, they walked out, and John Cordy shook my hand and said, congratulations, you have the part.
Fantastic. So was that the first time that you realized that it was Star Wars related when the Ewok came out? Or?
Kind of. I kind of had a hint when I was doing the original general interview, because I did see Ewok on the original script when I did the first monologue. So I kind of had a hint. I said, I wonder if this is Star Wars. And then, of course, by the time I was doing the screen test all day long, I knew it, even though they still didn't say it was George Lucas, because they were doing it through John Cordy Films. So I still didn't have an idea. I didn't know who John Cordy was. But when I was there, I saw Academy Awards. I saw Emmys, because John Cordy's won quite a few Academy Awards in his time, and Emmys as well. So, yeah, I think I kind of knew at that time. And it was like living a dream. It was like in fact, when I got back home, I found it very interesting that back then we had answering machines. I already had a couple messages congratulating me on getting the part. And that was from the time I flew from San Francisco to home. So that's how a couple hours later, I already had people giving me messages congratulating me. And we knew it was a big deal at that time. It was like, pinch me, I'm going to be involved in something that's like the next Star Wars or something, some sort of spinoff. It wasn't billed as, here it was always going to be a movie for television. So it was something that he was making for television. We didn't know it was going to get a theatrical release like it got in London and everywhere else. It was just supposed to be a television movie for the American market in Canada, and that was it. But I guess somewhere along the line, he came up with George Lucas, by the way, came up with the name Caravan of Courage. That was his name. So he renamed it Caravan of Courage, and it got the theatrical release. So, but yeah, I was pinching myself all the time. Well, wow, this is really exciting. And it's my first starring role, because at that time I'd only done, small roles, bit parts. So it was a big deal.
Yeah, and a hell of a thrill, I can imagine. And your character, Mace Tawani, you're really the main lead in the movie. And it's always struck me that Mace is a lot like Luke Skywalker in a way. The slightly shaggy haircut, if I can put it that way. The orange jumpsuit that's very similar to Luke's pilot outfit. Did you think at the time that there might have been a deliberate attempt to sort of link Mace with Luke in some way?
I don't think there was a deliberate attempt, but something in the back of your mind makes you wonder if that's why George picked me, because I looked a lot like Mark Hamill. And in fact, on the first week we were filming, like for the entire first week, people would say, "Hey, Mark," and I would turn around and they would see it was a younger looking, Eric Walker, Mace Tawani. But yeah, I'm sure that nobody's going to say it was that, but I mean, come on, I'm pretty confident that the fact that I looked a lot like Mark Hamill probably did help me in some way.
Yeah, it's definitely a heroic look, a Star Wars look, isn't it? And they actually went there with Ezra Bridger in the animated Rebels series. And Ezra had a very similar look again in the first series of Rebels. So it's nice to see that design.
There's some fan theories out there that he might be Mace Tawani. Some people joked about that. Him, or I think it was him, yeah. So
I like that.
But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that certainly helped me. But the monologue helped me. Preparing as an actor helped me, because later I found out that, the producer didn't hit the record button, but it remembered it like right before I did my monologue. So what George saw was me doing that very dramatic piece and crying, and this kid that has a tore up life. And I actually have the original audition that I did for them. I have that actually. They gave me a copy of it. So I have my original audition.
Fantastic.
It's a pretty physical role with a lot of jumping, running, climbing, firing weapons and such. Did you take that naturally? Was it like anything you'd done before?
Well, I mean, I was always very physical anyway, meant because that's how I even got started in the entertainment industry. I was playing on a football team, and I played baseball too. So I was always into sports and very athletic to begin with. But I mean, it was a very demanding role. I mean, I did train. They actually hired a trainer to train me before I did the movie because they thought, I was this pudgy little kid, overweight kid, and they asked me to lose 35 pounds to do the role. I ended up losing 30. I was real upset that I didn't get 35 pounds because they said, can you lose 35 pounds? I lost 30. They were thrilled that I lost 30 pounds because we started filming only like a month later. So I lost 30 pounds in a month. And they hired a trainer for me. His name was Bob Yerkes, and he was a well-known stunt coordinator and stunt artist. He used to train all the stars for, I don't know if you guys have it out there across the pond, but here we had something called Circus of the Stars. And he used to train all the people, all the actors when they did that Circus of the Stars. He had one of those, I can't say the name of it, when you're swinging back and forth.
Trapeze?
Trapeze, yeah. So I was doing that. And of course, mace flies through the air a lot. In fact, at one point when I get shot up to the Gorax cage in the Gorax Castle, I did part of that stunt. I actually flew about 15 feet in the air. They didn't end up using most of the stunt. They ended up using the one where he actually crashes into the cage, which was done by the stunt coordinator. Then I pick it up after that. So.
Since you brought up the Gorax, there's something I wanted to ask you about the production in that regard. And I mean, as you can tell, if anyone who's watched the movie, it's a costume performer being filmed at a high frame rate, so his movements, like, it looks like a large monster because it's slowed down
Correct.
just a little bit, right? But so when you had I guess the scenes in the cave, I'm trying to think of any other interactions there might have been, but did you guys did they have him come out on set, and did you have a visual reference for that? Like
they did let us watch them film some of those scenes, and I read somewhere where someone said it was a stop motion puppet, but it was not. It was a physical person in a costume the whole time, and it was one of the gentlemen that does the stop motion stuff. His name is John Berg, and John Berg is inside the costume, the Gorax costume, and those scenes were filmed by a gentleman who later became the cinematographer on Ewoks: Battle for Endor. But on Caravan of Courage, his name is Isidore Manovsky. He was doing all the stuff with the Gorax, and he also did the reshoots when George was directing as well.
Interesting. You guys were able to visit the set while they were doing some of the shots of the Gorax acting on a stage by himself, basically.
Yes, they did that, and the gentleman actually could do that voice too, that big roar. I heard him do the roar, and he scared the heck out of all of us. And it really helped us to have that kind of interaction. I was glad that they let us do that and go watch a little bit of it. So we knew, because all the shots were with us with the Gorax are blue screen shots. So we're not, when they put us together, that's all blue screen.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if they brought him out or if, because you do hear those complaints from some actors on early blue screen projects where they didn't know what they were looking at. So it's cool that they invited you guys out to actually see that stuff being filmed.
It did. It definitely helped us for sure. Be able to pretend and visualize, what that giant monster looked like, because we were able to see what he looked like prior. So that was a good visual aid. But it was very difficult while working with blue screen effects and all the other practical. The practical effects on the set help a lot too when squibs are going off. But you got to pretend like when I'm firing the laser blaster, you got to just believe that it's a laser blaster, and you just you see the squib go off, so it hit something. So, and the sparks fly, and there's ones. In fact, there's a scene in the very beginning of the movie when you first see Mace, and he's threatening the Ewoks, and the blaster goes off. The squib was so close to me that its sparks actually went inside my boot and started burning me at one point. So I got a little burn on my and got a hole in my sock, but I was okay. But little things like that could happen.
It's all part of being an action hero, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
what a fantastic role to kick off with. It really was a good lead action role. You were mainly filming out on location in Northern California among the redwoods. What was it like being out on set not on set, out on location? It must have been quite an adventure with all the film crew and all the wagons and everything else.
It was definitely, it definitely helped, putting on that, that orange flight suit and being in a very exotic location like that in these where these redwoods are at. We weren't up on Return of the Jedi. They filmed where the big, larger redwoods are up like around Crescent City up near the Oregon border. But they couldn't do that. It was too far away. So they found this nice patch of redwoods pretty close to Skywalker Ranch. The name, most of the time we filmed there, it was called Roy's Redwood Preserves. You could look it up. It's actually, I think it's a state park, but it's Roy's Redwoods. You could look it up online. That's where we shot most of the Caravan of Courage. And also on the second Ewok movies, they were using the archery range a lot in that area as well. Of course, we also filmed on Skywalker Ranch, a good portion of it as well. And at the time, they were just starting to build Skywalker Ranch. So the only thing they had finished was the main house. They didn't have all that other stuff done. So they were just in the process of he was just starting to build his empire at that point.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of your acting, you've already alluded to the blue screen work. The whole movie must have been a real challenge from an acting perspective, because you were mostly acting with costume characters. The only other human in most of the movie is Aubrey Miller, who was obviously very young at the time. Was that a real challenge for you as an actor, not having other faces and people to play off?
Well, I mean, the Ewoks, when they had dialogue, so written in the script, so they were actually speaking to us, even though later they went and did their own language. In fact, on Jedi, the Ewoks didn't have their own language, but for the Ewok movies, they actually hired a lady who actually created an entire Ewok language, by the way. And they have it. I don't know somewhere in the archives, they must have everything. And also on the second movie, The Marauders, they have their own languages as well. So it was it wasn't that it wasn't a challenge. I think the effects were more of a challenge than working with actors and costumes, because they're still speaking to us. They're looking at us. They're interacting with us. So working with the Ewoks or other characters that had costumes, they were fine. They helped. They were believable, and it helps you. For me, the difficult part was, like, for example, there was these Wisties, they call them, which has Queen Izarina, and they look like little fireflies. That was difficult, always pretending, because you would be looking at this light they were swinging around, and I had a light in my hand too, which they later got rid of. That stuff and the blue screen, those effects were tougher for me. But as you mentioned, it is a very physical role. It is the biggest role I ever did. I was the only actor that was on set every single day. In fact, the last day of filming, I was the only principal actor there, where they were doing, they were at someone's house, and we were doing the magic pond scene where Mace is trapped underneath the magic pond. So they filmed that in someone's backyard pool. So I was the only one there that last day of filming. So I couldn't even say goodbye to everybody, and I remember Warwick Davis wrote me a note. I still have the note. He said, thank you. It was fun working with you. Sorry I couldn't say goodbye. And he wrote a comment, a joke we had. He says, scratch your neck, which was a joke we had, running joke on the set. So
I was going to come on to Warwick. I mean, I've met Warwick a number of times. He's a lovely chap, very warm and friendly. And you guys obviously got on during the filming.
Well, we're like two peas in a pod. We're the same age. In fact, our birthdays are only 3 days apart. That's how close we are. We're both Aquarius. My birthday is January 31st. His birthday is February 3rd. So we're like 3 days apart. Born the same year. We got on very well. We probably did some stuff we probably regret being teenagers, looking back. Bothering some people and acting up a little bit. But we had a great time, and you're right. He's a great person, great personality. The fact that he did the comedy later with Ricky Gervais and all that other stuff he's done in his life, I could see him doing that because he was a very funny person. So I remember even when we were doing the making of for a school project, we did something called the making of. We did a documentary, behind the scenes look at Caravan of Courage. And I remember he would do all these TV commercials, and they were funny. So he had that great comic timing, even as a kid. And he has a beautiful family now. He's had a wonderful career. I'm so proud of him. He's done very well for himself.
You think this new Ewok movie, the title Ewok holiday movie, will stand?
Well, I think we're making a very good movie. We have very good actors, and I think there's nothing like it on television. See, this will be a 2-hour movie of the week, and most of those stories are not like this at all. They almost never have costumes. They're usually about families that are, contemporary life stories or marriage stories or something like that, crime stories, but they never have this kind of look to them.
We've got to dig a little deeper into this behind the scenes footage that you and Warwick were filming, because I've seen the clip that you posted on YouTube a few years back. That's about 12 minutes.
Right.
I feel like I've heard you say that you've got hours of this stuff.
Yeah, there's a couple hours footage. Yeah, he has other footage as well, because he had his own camera, so he was taking other footage that I don't have. So between the two of us, we probably have 2 or 3 hours worth of footage together.
That's great. And I feel like there's more people just looking into and searching this movie than there even was a few years ago when you put that on.
Sure.
Of course, it's a lot of work to do some editing, but I'm sure there's an audience for that stuff.
I not only think there is an audience for that. I've already touched base with Disney Plus to ask them if they would like us to do something with that. So keep your fingers crossed. Who knows? The Ewok movies is getting released on Disney Plus. Maybe they'll let us do a Disney gallery like they did with The Mandalorian. I'm down for it. I'd love to take the footage that I have and get other footage from Warwick. Maybe we could even do like a look back and do new interviews with Warwick and myself. And if Disney, we've actually already mentioned it to them. We're waiting for an answer, but keep your fingers crossed.
Glad to hear it. They must be at the very least interested in seeing what you've got. They
did say that we're past that stage. They're at least looking at some of the footage now.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, very much so. It was a missed opportunity when the DVD release came out a few years back, that there was no commentary and there were no behind the scenes, no extras on there. I think there would be a real market to see this stuff now.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's not just that, but there's a lot of scenes that were cut out of the movie. There's a lot of deleted scenes in the Ewok, at least in Caravan of Courage. The second movie they didn't have as many deleted scenes. There was pretty much what you see on screen was the original script. But the Caravan of Courage had quite a few different scenes. Things changed, deleted scenes. The original ending of the movie didn't happen the way it was written. It was supposed to be Wicket, Mace, and Sindel dancing in the snow as it started snowing. And that's how it was supposed to end. So that whole scene was cut. There was another scene with called the Gulping Flower Glade, where, and in fact, that as actually there's pictures of that deleted scene in, I think, one of Steve Sansweet's books. But that scene was deleted, and they put the tree monster in there. That's the reason why Mace is he puts the wrong hand in the tree, because that was a scene that later George wrote and did during the pickup shots. He directed that scene. That was because for whatever reason, maybe the effects or things didn't look right or they didn't like it. They cut that scene and put the other scene in there. Which had the biggest continuity mistake in the movie, because later you see Mace getting his hand fixed and it's the wrong hand. But the stuff like that happens. Continuity errors happen all the time. That's just part of filmmaking.
Yeah, you mentioned George's involvement there. Now, John Corty, who was the main director, he's a fantastic director in his own right. But obviously, George, having been the creative force behind Star Wars, what was he like to work with, and how much involvement did he have with the movie and on set and on location?
From what I understand, he was very heavily involved in behind the scenes stuff. He was doing a lot of the editing with the editor. He was getting back into it, and he enjoyed it so much. And then what happened was we had to do these pickup shots, these reshoots. I mean, nowadays everybody's screaming like, oh, all this conspiracy stuff. Oh, they have to reshoot half the movie. No, that's pretty normal. They were doing that back in the 80s. What they do is they do pickup shots. They do new scenes for whatever reason that they need to do that. And John Corty had a prior engagement, so he couldn't be there. He was working on something else. So George stepped in. And in fact, I have a call sheet. The very first day we did the reshoot, it said Director George Lucas on it. The next day, suddenly his name disappeared. I guess someone got in trouble for doing that, and it said John Cordy's name again. But I kept that call sheet, which is a nice piece of memorabilia to have. But yeah, what was George like to work versus John Cordy? Well, as you mentioned, John Cordy is a great director. He's what we call an actor's director. And an actor's director is a director that kind of knows something about acting. So they're able to talk with you, help you get through. Like if a scene you have to have a certain emotion, they help guide you through the process because they know something about acting. George is a technical director. Nothing wrong with that. I've worked with a lot of technical directors. They kind of let you do your own thing. They kind of give you a little bit of outline of the character, but they let you do your thing. But they're more focused on how the shot's set up, how it's going to look, and how it's going to be edited. And he's probably editing in his mind as he's shooting it as well. That's how brilliant George is. I'm certain of it. You could see his mind working. Very fast paced as well. When he's on the set, it seems like everybody's moving 100 miles an hour. But he was neat to work with, and very fast.
And were you ever asked to do the scene again, faster, more intense?
That's funny. I think he said that once or twice. But at the time, I didn't think about that joke that everybody says. So at the time, it didn't dawn on me that that's his typical phrase, because this is the first time I worked with him. But yeah, George is my biggest problem was he would rewrite a scene and I would have like 3 or 4 lines, and then suddenly he would rewrite the scene in his own handwriting and hand it to me, and suddenly I had 10 lines when I only had 3 or 4 lines. And I go, how am I going to remember this? And this is George. How am I going to memorize all these extra 10 lines and I'm going to be shooting it? So I was like freaking out about that a little bit. But you prevail. I wish I would have kept those notes. So I think I threw them away, not thinking at the time. So it would have been pretty cool to, have a copy of George rewriting a scene in his own handwriting. It wasn't even typed.
Do you remember what your initial reaction was to the film when it finally came out? Was there a cast and crew screening that you were a part of?
There was a cast and crew screening. I didn't make it to the cast and crew screening because I had a prior engagement, but I was able to catch it during one of the ABC. ABC was having screenings down here, so I was able to go to 20th Century Fox and I saw a screening of it, and I got to see a longer version of it because originally I think the theatrical release was a little bit longer than the TV version, and it had more credits, of course. So when I was watching it, I saw it in the movie theater, and it played really well. I think we got cheated here in America and Canada because it looked a lot better in the movie theater than it did on television.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because this is a conversation I've had with a few other Ewok movie enthusiasts. Like there's this guy who does a great podcast called Star Wars at the Movies named Steve Danley, and I was talking to him about this. Like, did the European theatrical release have a different aspect ratio? Like, was it 4:3 like the TV version, or was it widescreen? And you're saying it might have been longer, so it's like I can't wait to find out what version we're gonna get on Disney Plus. It might just be a capture of that DVD that came out in 2004, but I hope it's a little more than that.
Well, one would hope that they would clean up some things in the movie, like, because they didn't do it at the time. But like when we're in the Gorak's castle, where the spider webs are, that spider, the lines, the strings for the spider, one would hope that they would clean it up and get rid of those. That was another big mistake that I just couldn't stand, seeing those. And in the movie theater, you almost couldn't notice them, but on TV, on the sharper quality that they have, the HD quality, I could see it more on television than in the movie theater. That's probably why they didn't take the time to get rid of the strings.
Well, on Disney Plus, they did animate out a cigarette out of Harrison Ford's hand in Empire of Dreams and some of the behind the scenes footage. So I wouldn't be surprised if they put in a little work.
So.
Yeah.
That was great if they did, because that was my biggest gripe this whole time.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing it again. I think it's held up really well as a family adventure movie. I watched it it was either the DVD or the video release a couple of years ago with my kids, and they really enjoyed it. They thought it was fantastic entertainment. So yeah, it's going to be great to see it again, and as you say, to see what little tweaks and changes they might have made.
Yeah, are the Ewoks are they going to blink on this version as well? So I mean, if they did make some changes, that'd be great. It is a great film for kids. It's a great family story. That's what people got to remember. It's not supposed to be like Star Wars. It's more of a kind of Star Wars, but it's a family adventure that George created.
Yeah, and as I say, I think it holds up really well even today. So Caravan of Courage was the first movie, and as you say, it was a TV release in America. It was a theatrical release in Europe. When did you hear that a sequel was in the works, or had that been the plan all along?
Well, no, we had planned on. We were signed to do a trilogy originally, because I had when we signed our contracts, they had signed us. They had 2 options to do 2 more movies. Of course, they picked up the second option. They didn't pick up the latter option. I heard through the rumor mill there was actually, it got at one point to it, there was actually a script written for the third Ewok movie, but that's beyond that. I know there's a script out there, but I know they didn't make it. So because they were getting too involved and getting too busy with everything else that Lucasfilm was doing at the time. But from the very beginning, George had seen this as an adventure, had seen it as a trilogy. That's why he signed us that way. What happened in the second Ewok movie, my fate and Mace's fate and the family's fate and dying like that, all happened the weekend before they started the writing sessions. Originally, the Wheat brothers and George were thinking about, the Wheat brothers even told me they had some ideas for a family story, but what had happened was George and these movies were made for his daughter, basically, Amanda Lucas. They were kind of like, she loved the Ewoks, and he was doing these extra movies for her. And they had the weekend before the writing session, they were watching Heidi, where Shirley Temple's an orphan. So that's how the idea came. They wanted to make Sindel an orphan and bring in this hermit character like Noah, was played by Wilford Brimley. That's how that all came about. And that happened. If they had not watched that movie, it might have been a different outcome. So,
yeah, I got to say, I thought it was a bit of a kick in the teeth, the way that happened, killing off the parents and killing off Mace.
He took a lot of flack from it. He took a lot of flack. I mean, the critics didn't like the second movie that much. They thought it was too overwhelming to have such a young girl do a demanding role like that, and it didn't seem realistic. It didn't get as good as ratings as the first movie, but I thought Aubrey Miller did an outstanding job. Of course, Wilford Brimley did a great job. There was a lot of trials and tribulations that happened as a result on the second movie. A lot of stuff went down that is just coming out about it on the set. There was a lot of drama with Wilford Brimley and some of the directors, but it's okay. That's the way filmmaking is. You get ideas. In fact, him working with the Wheat brothers, for example, he had seen a movie they did, a screening of a movie they did, and he really liked their talent, so he wanted to work with them. That's how they got the job to direct the second Ewok movie. And they are brilliant, by the way. They're brilliant. They're a great directing team. They're brilliant writers. Of course, that they're involved with the Riddick series as well. It was a kick in the teeth. Originally, I was told I wasn't even going to be in the movie. I was told Mace was dead. Something happened. Aubrey Miller's parents, her mother, called my dad and said, "Gene, I want to let you know to tell Eric, I wanted to tell you so you could speak with him about it before he finds out. But Mace he's not going to be in the second Ewok movie." So I was told I wasn't even going to be in it, and it was very upsetting, being a kid that was a very young kid at the time. And so it made me more determined when they said, we're going to go ahead and bring Mace, and they wrote Mace in. And so I decided I was going to go out with a bang, and I was going to fight as hard as I could. And I was going to show them for knocking Mace out. I'm going to, kill as many Marauders as I can. So it actually encouraged me on that level.
Having had such emotional investment in the story in Caravan and Courage, and the dramatic rescue and the happy ending, and then to lose Mace and the parents so early into the second movie. In talking with my co-host Chris here beforehand, we'd likened it to the start of Alien 3. In the Aliens movie, again, there's the rescue, there's the happy ending, They've saved the little girl. And then the next movie opens, and all of a sudden the little girl and the Marine are dead, and you think the android's dead, and it's just Sigourney Weaver carrying on. And you think, what? That's no way to open the third movie.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same payoff.
Missed opportunity, and and people didn't buy it as much. It didn't do as well overseas, even in the theater. It's okay. It happened, and I was happy to play my role in it. You know what though? You never see Mace die. You just see his life monitor go off. So who knows? Maybe Mace could pop up somewhere in the Star Wars universe again if Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni decided that they wanted to do something. Who knows where it could pop up? It would be interesting.
Well, Boba Fett's been resurrected, so you never know.
Exactly. And I mean, yeah, I do share your sentiment that it's a shame we didn't get to see the character do some more in that second movie, but there is something, and I think this is something we're all going to notice when this movie gets put on Disney Plus, and a lot of people see it for the first time, because they're going to find it on a service they're already paying for. They're not going to have to track down a DVD on eBay or something like that, right? So I think a lot of people are going to be genuinely re-shocked at how that second film opens up, and I think there's something refreshing just about how weird and different that intro is, and I feel like you don't see it. They kind of took a chance with it, and it's a unique opening, and I think that we don't see a whole lot of gambling like that anymore.
You don't. You know what? And you know what? I hands off to George Lucas for doing that. It takes some great huevos to do that in Spanish, but. And one of the things too was when it aired on television here, it was the first movie in America that was aired with the parental advisory before the movie started. By the way, that's something very unique. Not too many people talk about. They actually had a parental advisory before all those scenes happened, telling kids might be frightened or whatever by what might happen.
That's very interesting, because you're not too far away in time from Temple of Doom, which was the first PG-13 movie, if I'm not mistaken. So Lucas was really affecting ratings all over the place in that era.
Yep, it's true.
There weren't very many collectibles available from the Ewok movies, were there? Which I thought is a bit of a disappointment, because there was really an opportunity again there. They could have been licensed a lot more heavily. I've got a few Caravan of Courage items in my collection, but they're mainly cinema bows. They're posters. I've got lobby cards, badges, publicity material, that sort of thing. Is it a regret to you that you never had an action figure?
I don't see why. I don't understand why Mace didn't have his own action figure. He would have been a cool action figure. A lot of accessories, like, remember he had a knife that he used to swat at the spiders. He also had his own little fire starter lighter there. He had all these accessories on his belt. He had his blaster. I mean, he would have been a cool action figure. And it's not too late for them to do something if they decided to do something, but I think that was a missed opportunity. I agree with you. I did hear that Kenner did approach George about doing some action figures, and I don't know if it got to the prototype stage, but I heard that George, again, he was doing these movies for his daughter, and he wasn't thinking about that. He didn't think of these movies probably in the same league as his other Star Wars stuff. He should have, but again, he was doing it, so he said no. And it could have been the timing. If you have the right timing with George, he says yes sometimes. So I did hear that they were talking about doing it, but then and ABC wanted a TV series. They kept trying to push him for a television series after the first movie, because it was seen by over 65 million people the night it aired. It did very well, but he said no to that because he wanted to do a couple movies, and that was it.
And during that time period, I think the Ewoks cartoon might have been going on at the same time, or maybe just during the second movie, but that did have its own toy line too. And then there was a bunch of Ewok figures from the Power of the Force and Return of the Jedi lines too. So it might have been there were a lot of Ewoks on the shelves already. And
that could be another reason. Yep.
But Hasbro is still looking for new content to bring out. I mean, they seem to rehash the same figures over and over, but there are new figures coming.
Oh, they would sell a lot of Mace figures. I get people all the time asking,
I think they would. Have you ever had any conversations more recently with Hasbro?
I haven't, but I actually we're working on like a Mace action figure for me to allow my fans to have, which is actually is being made by one of the guys who did the original Kenner stuff back in the 80s. So it's going to be a vintage Mace figure, and he's working on it right now as we speak. And he was responsible for doing Walrus Man. He did the original Dewback. He did Han Solo on Hoth. He did that figure. So he did a lot of really vintage figures for Kenner, and he's doing a Mace action figure. He's working on it right now. They could have that if they want it, but I was trying to put something together just for some fans that been asking for it all the time.
That's very cool, because Hasbro did one time put out a teak figure for a Star Tours set, and thing goes for a couple $100, that set, and that's 2010 or something. So I'm sure there'd be a demand from collectors for that kind of a thing.
I'm sure there would. I was going to ask you, Eric, whether you're a collector yourself, and I don't need to ask that question looking at that display behind you. Do you have any Ewok collectibles? Was there anything that you kept from the movies, or anything that you picked up around the time?
Well, I mean, at the time, George was just like he did with Warwick Davis. He didn't send me as many toys as he sent Warwick, but George did for a couple Christmases send me Star Wars stuff. So I actually have stuff that he sent me. I should check it because some of them might be pretty valuable. But I have those still. And I become I'm a big Star Wars nerd and a geek and all sci-fi fan. So I have a big collection like you just referenced, because they can't see this on a podcast, but you're seeing some of my collection in my home. But I have quite a collection. I collect everything that I can get my hands on, including stuff that's like from this last Star Wars Celebration. It didn't happen. I collected everything that they offered there too, even though it didn't happen, which was kind of cool. And I'm always trying to collect. Always trying to. I love my Star Wars collection, and that's the toys I collect. I don't collect any other like Star Trek or other sci-fi brands. I have a few things that people have given me over the time, but anything Star Wars, I'm down for collecting it.
Excellent. Well, I'll be looking out for that Mace action figure. I've definitely got to pick myself up one of them.
Great.
So since the movies, you've obviously continued your acting career. You've had a very prolific career in film and television. But what I hadn't realized until doing my research for the podcast is that you're also a very accomplished musician. You've had 3 albums out now, I think.
Yes.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and the Star Wars connections in your music.
Well, I mean, and becoming an actor, you try to become you try to do more things and become like a double or triple threat. So, I kept studying, and I went to the LA County High School for the Performing Arts. Even in high school, I was still studying my acting. And that's when I picked up my love for playing piano and composing and stuff like that. We would have like a 2-hour lunch break. So I'd go into the music department, and I'd play on the piano for an hour. So I'm pretty much self-taught, but I started back in high school. So we're going back 30 something years that I've been playing. And that's my biggest love, being a composer. And my music's been very compared to it's very atmospheric. It takes you on a journey. So if you want to just relax, it's not chill music. It's because at some points it would make you want to get up and dance as well. But I was heavily influenced in the 80s and 90s by a group called Tangerine Dream. It was very influential in my music. Jean-Michel Jarre as well, Vangelis. So my music is kind of a combination of all those people that influenced me over the years. And I have 3 albums, like you mentioned. And because I'm involved in Star Wars, a lot of times I'll write a track that's Star Wars theme. Like on my first album, I wrote a track called Return to Endor. And that track is basically, there's a scene in Caravan of Courage that was cut out where Logray was doing this Ewok ceremony where he was summoning the spirits of people that died. And I vision maybe Mace, if he did die, who knows, maybe he'll come back to life. But filming that scene inspired me to write that song. So if you watch, you can't see the scene, but now you could kind of visualize it if you listen to the music. So Return to Endor is one song on my album called Tangier Dream. It's not a pun on Tangerine Dream. It's just I did written that song because I was given this vision. And a lot of times my music it comes to me in my dreams, and I'll get up and I'll go either if I'm not too lazy, I'll come into where my piano is at, and I'll do something, no matter if it's 3 o'clock in the morning. But if I'm too lazy, I'll hum into a tape recorder, whatever the melody is that was given to me or whatever I was hearing in my dreams. And Return to Endor was one of those. The title track to that album, Tangier Dream, is one of those. I was in my dream. I was in Morocco, and there was just like this like harmonic type of convergence that was happening, and all the nations of the world were meeting there, and it was just like harmonious thing. That's how I came up with that song. But a lot of times my music comes to me that way in my dreams, like I mentioned. And then my second album, Universal Delight, was just a fun album. My last album, Brand New Day, I was actually up for a Grammy on that album. And my music's done pretty well. I do have I do have my first album where there is it's not all instrumental. It's gonna, each track is gonna have someone singing on it, and myself as well singing and doing spoken word. That album is going to be coming out in June or July, and that has a track as well that's inspired by the Star Wars universe. That track is called "Dare to Dream in a Galaxy Far, Far Away." We have a music video that's online already, but that's going to be the first single from that album. But yeah, so I'm just very much I'm more in my life right now. I'm more focused on my music, and that's my passion.
Yeah, I've listened to some of the music on your various channels. I mean, it's great. It's multi-layered. It's atmospheric. It's really quite inspirational. It's good stuff.
Thank you.
That last track you mentioned, that's the one that premiered at Celebration, I think.
Yes, we did the last Celebration in Chicago. We aired it then, but we didn't release it yet. It's going to be on the new album. So
fantastic. And where can our listeners find your music? Pick up your albums.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on every major outlet. So if somebody has Spotify, you go to Spotify. If someone has iTunes, I'm on iTunes. I'm on Amazon. I'm everywhere you could download music, basically. Just type in Eric Walker in any of the number of my albums. Tangier Dream is one of them. Universal Light is my second album. Brand New Day is my third. This next album, I don't have a title yet, but it might be similar to, I'm thinking about calling it The Dare to Dream in a Galaxy Far, Far Away, but I haven't made that decision yet. Or you could just go to my official music website. That is ericwalkermusic.com is my official website.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd recommend checking that out. And you're also an author, aren't you? I think you were working on a book about the Ewok movies that was in the works at one point. Can you tell us any more about that and any other projects that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, that book is pretty much done. I had started it with a Kickstarter campaign because the fans were trying to help me. They wanted me to write it. And it's called Growing Up in a Galaxy Far, Far Away. The puns here, just over and over and over. I haven't released it. I did release a version of the book for the Kickstarter because they were supposed to get a copy of it. So I self-published that book. So there's only like 100 copies of it out there. So they're very rare if you could get a copy of it. I am looking for a publisher. So once I get a publisher lined up, because I don't want to self-publish, because I think if I self-publish, they may not get I may not be able to get it out there like a publisher can for me. So I am looking for a publisher. So if any publisher happens to hear this podcast, give me a call. I am looking at a few right now to possibly get it out sometime later in the year.
Fantastic. Again, that's good news. I look forward to seeing that. And then the other thing I was going to mention is your website, which I've been taking a look through these past few days, All for Sci-Fi.
That's the geek in me. That's who doesn't love sci-fi? Not just Star Wars, but sci-fi in general. So I was thinking, why not do it? Why not put a website where we don't just have Star Wars, we don't just have Star Trek, we don't just have Babylon 5 or all the different sci-fi genres out there, Stargate. I could go on and on and on. why not have a universal spot where everybody could go to and enjoy the love of sci-fi? So I created allforsci-fi.com, the whole word spelled out. I have the other acronyms too, but I only got those so somebody can't come in behind me and do something. But yeah, just go to allforsci-fi.com, spell out the whole word. And there we do everything from unboxing of toys, Star Wars toys, to doing reviews of everything that's out. Our latest review is on The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is just coming out, but we do everything sci-fi.
It's a good channel. As I say, I've been taking a look over the weekend. It's certainly one I'll be following.
Thank you.
Well, that's great. Eric, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you today. Returning to a galaxy far, far away, you told me some things that I certainly never knew about the Ewok movies and about your career. So that's all been really, really interesting. And thank you again for joining us on the Vintage Rebellion. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Eric.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. It was fun.